Today we're going to talk about the often touted genre redefiner, the sometimes maligned divider of a fanbase, Resident Evil 4. The game's so nice they ported it twice, to the PC anyway. The game's been around a lot. Starting from the GameCube, we have then the PS2, the PC, Wii, PS3, 360, the PC again, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, iOS, Android, and the Zebo. Anyhow, we're getting off track. With the announcement of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X now confirming their respective existence, we all know that sooner or later, Resident Evil 4 is going to make the jump to these next-gen monsters.
Something that might interest you.
Or so I thought, as now at the time of editing it may be getting a remake instead. Yay, I guess? Sorry, Code Veronica, it seems someone's jumped the queue. Anyhow, I thought I'd be an entitled, opinionated bugger and posit a question to the First Aid Spray Discord. What would you like to see if Resident Evil 4 had DLC? There was some interesting feedback. Additionally, with these recent news stories making the rounds of a remake coming out, it seemed like there was only one thing for me to do. I'm Steve from First Aid Spray, and this is 5 additions we'd make to the original RE4. Oh, and before we dive in proper, this is purely hypothetical, so even if there's a grand idea that is somehow a stroke of genius masterwork, please don't harass Capcom, the development team, or anyone involved. Please and thank you. Basic quality of life. Okay, so Resident Evil 4 is still a game that holds up fairly well in my eyes, but I'm sure even with a few minutes we could effect a few positive changes just looking at its follow-up titles. First thing I'm thinking about is menu shortcuts. Pretty much every RE game following 4 had the means of switching weapons while neck deep in the heat of the action. Resident Evil 4, however, doesn't. What I'm suggesting is we give the player the means to assign quick swap shortcuts, so Leon doesn't have to trundle in and out of a menu to either switch guns or pull out a grenade. While we're at it, a facsimile of Revelation 1's herb system wouldn't be too bad either. It's a simple button press instead of menu diving to instantly heal up during gameplay. Although I must admit I don't know how I would prioritise which gets used first, herbs, eggs or sprays. These changes might sound a little game breaking mayhaps, but it's all in the process of reducing menu diving, which personally slows things down a bit in a heated battle. By all means, keep the original approach there as is as well, since it pauses the action to give stressed players a breather. Keeping with menus and needless faffing about, a sort button. I mean, it's fun to rearrange your attaché case, but it can be a nightmare to look at after a solid fracas with some zealots, leaving things looking a right state. I cannot tell you how great it was in the remake of 2 to just smash a button and the box went in order. If we can find a way to do this with the attaché case, perfect. If only so I can make room for my inessential purchase of a mine thrower. Okay. These are small potato changes, but they are quality of life things, so how about we do something with a bit more kick?
Okay, I have only one very important question. You got a smoke?
Got gum.
What was Luis Serra up to? So, how about a new mini-campaign? If there's one thing that's still a little bit of a mystery in Resident Evil 4, it's what everyone's favourite ex-cop from Madrid / Las Plagas researcher was actually doing behind the scenes. I can't be the only one who wanted to know where he was running off to half the time. Likely pursued by Ganados and other monstrosities as he was rushing to get Ada her sample and maybe Leon his cure? It's no secret the recent franchise entries have had a thing for stalker-type enemies, so why not have the big cheese himself, Pretorius Mendez, take a leaf out of Mr. X's playbook and hunt down Sarah while he tries to achieve his goals. I bet he could bench a helicopter just as much. Alternatively, we could throw a different kind of stalker at him. Thinking of the 3.5 fans, we could have a Hookman. I miss you, Hookman. You were legitimately creepy. For those not in the know, this creature was essentially a stalker-type enemy seen in promotional work for one of Resident Evil 4's many scrapped iterations. It's a ghostly killer with chains and hook hands, determined to end the life of everyone's favourite floppy-haired secret agent. Including this monster, even in a side scenario, would be a victory very much in the same way that Elza Walker's biker gear was in Remake 2. It's a nod to what could have been, which doesn't corrupt the core balance of the adventure proper.
Been a long time, comrade.
Assignment Krauser. Now, let's talk about Krauser, the inside man, the traitor. Rather than shatter canon entirely and make him a good guy or something equally ridiculous, I think a side mode, like Assignment Ada, might be a fun time. Even as a base reskin of this mode with his unique tools. Namely, the Rambo implications of his bow and arrow, coupled with his OP Core of Death, could change how the game plays. Maybe nerf the charge up speed on that though. My thinking here is similar to how Tofu is different from Hunk in the 4th Survivor from Resident Evil 2, in that it's a simple weapon loadout change, but completely changes how the game unfolds. Alternatively, there is also the separate ways approach here as well, but I must admit it feels strange for Krauser to be killing Ganados outright, so a stealth mission perhaps might fit his demeanour more, him being a commando. Whatever the case, we should make his goal to try and acquire the ever-important sample before his fateful encounter with Leon and Ada. If this is the approach we take, we absolutely need to have a Leon boss fight. A true role reversal if there ever was one. Resident Evil Mercenaries Renovations. Back in the day, if Base RE4 is the main course, the dessert was the Mercenaries. A revision of the survival gauntlet from 3, it's now back as a pure score attack mode. There's room here for quite a few changes. The vanilla version already offers up a nice selection of 5 characters and 4 maps, but I think after so long has passed, it's fair to say we could use an update. I think we could add to what is already on offer. My picks for characters are Luis Serra and the Merchant himself. My thoughts here that we use the leftover weapons in the main game's arsenal to flesh out these 2 new movesets. Now Luis, I see as a bit of an old schooler. He packs the Red 9 in cutscenes, so that's a good starter. Alongside, we give him the bolt action rifle and the broken butterfly magnum for close range and long range firepower. Disclaimer, Steve has no idea what game balance is and just likes the look of the vintage weapons. The Merchant, the madman with a coat full of guns, takes the leftover weapons with the fully kitted out striker, mine thrower, and a single shot version of the PRL 412. This probably sounds like overkill and pure firepower. However, I don't have a decent comeback for that other than the Mercenaries is meant to be fun, so let's go crazy. Moving on to maps, the combination of areas and enemies is actually surprisingly varied in the main game. And rather than go into intense detail, I'm going to give you the short version, or my suggestions on this video are going to be over 2 hours long. My top 3 picks, I'm thinking first off, the water room. Iconic, nightmarish. We put this room, fill it with zealots and armadoras. After all, they're easy on their own, but they're nightmares as a group. Should be a good fight. Second place, the prison cells, the place where the Novistadors show up in the main game. As their backup boss enemy type, I'm thinking a toned down version of Verdugo because they're all insectoids and creepy. And finally, the laboratory from the island. Now this place doesn't sound too exciting, but then when you realise what's in there, and by that I mean the regenerators, then we're in for a fun time. Because they are killable with conventional force, so having a tanky enemy like that drawing aggro should make Mercenaries more interesting. Now I could talk about this subject for hours, but to make it more interesting, why don't you sound off in the comment section below with your suggestions? I genuinely would love to hear them.
What's so funny?
Oh, I think you know. The American prevailing is a cliché that only happens in your Hollywood movies. Oh, Mr. Kennedy, you entertain me. To show my appreciation, I will help you awaken from your world of clichés.
Boss rush. For my final suggestion, this may well be the strangest addition I'd make, but it just feels right, you know? Capcom games, in particular the Mega Man series, tended to feature a boss rush where the Blue Bomber himself takes on his foes in sequence. Traditionally it's part of the story, but we are getting a little sidetracked here. My thoughts here are a roguelite / time attack style mode. We make a hub area with the merchant, make his shop prices a little bit more reasonable, and his hardware random to a degree. If infinite weapons will appear, they are toned down and no longer infinite. Attached to this hub are 4 rooms that teleport you to bosses throughout the main game. With each killed, you acquire money, buy from the merchant upgrades, and follow that gameplay loop to prepare for the final boss. As a final boss, I prefer something that's a little bit more epic, so we're going to take both forms of Saddler and turn it into a sort of 2-stage battle, where you fight him as a human, and then in his final grotesque form. Since this mode has a time attack element, the option to go and fight Saddler should be available whenever the player is comfortable. The quicker your time, multiplied by how many bosses you've killed, will dictate your final score. To maintain a bit of variety, as there are only potentially 5 bosses in a full run, 4 optional and then the Saddler finish, I would keep them randomized in some aspects as well. We can use either just Leon or follow the Mercenaries template, though how to apply the different melee moves and weapon specialties does seem a little bit of a juggling act, I must admit. Not to mention, some characters' abilities would probably steamroll smaller bosses. Looking at you, Neck Snap and Claw Boy. And that was 5 additions that we'd make to the original Resident Evil 4. I genuinely hope you've had fun listening to me ramble on, and by all means sound off in the comments below your thoughts and ideas for what you'd add to the original Resident Evil 4. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit that subscribe button and bell to stay up to date with more content like this in the future. Anyhow, I've been Steve for First Aid Spray. Always be excellent to each other, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!